So if we take that ball of clay and we continue to push it down, it's gonna start to push out. But if I don't push it on the inside, it continues to make that mushroom, and then the clay isn't attached to the floor of the wheel. So I'm gonna take away the extra wet water there and then come back in and kind of push that clay back in a little bit. So even when you're coming flat, you still need pressure from both hands. It just changes which one is more dominant. And again, I'm starting in the center and I'm slowly creeping my hand out to bring this thing wide, and it's about an inch thick. Again, anytime if you get a spiral on the surface of your clay and your throwing lines aren't right on top of each other, it's because you've moved your hands too fast, or alternatively your wheel's going too slow. So now I have this flat disc, and if we were going to be making plates, this is what we would start with. So again, we always start the centered shape with the form of a general form of what it's going to become. But this is another great way to make straps or handles on the wheel, and you can do that by just starting again right in the center, and I'm going to go all the way down to the wheel head with my 2 fingers, and then I'm going to come back out, press that little clay down, and then I'm going to come, maybe I'll get 2, yeah, I'll do 2. I'm going to hold my finger in this one spot and just push down together. And I'm pushing all the way down to the wheel head. And a little clay's there, it's okay. And now I have 2 straps, which I can make thinner or I can stretch certain ways. So I'm just gonna, on the outside, I'm gonna kind of grab on either side and compress on the top. And that's just recentering it. And I'm kind of pulling it towards myself slowly, and you can see it getting lighter. Okay. I'm gonna clean out that inside area, and then I can do the same thing with this. I can kind of pull it out towards myself. Just enough to get in there with my fingers, and then I can just compress in between, and it will rise it up and make it taller.
Reminds me of like making a donut.
Yeah, yeah. So then I have these shapes, right? So I could decide I want this one to pitch in. So I'm gonna use my finger on the inside to brace it and my sponge on the outside. And I'm just gonna push from the outside in while kind of, if I push too much, I can collapse it. So that's why I always want a hand on the inside. I can, I'm kind of pushing out a little bit and maybe making a little bit round. So I just want you to figure out what kind of shapes you can make. Right, so this is bringing a form in. We could close this thing up and make it hollow and make a knob, right? So there's lots of different things that we can think about. Maybe on this one I'll pull it out. So my hand, I'm gonna get this with a little bit of moisture on here. So it's sliding around. And now I'm just gonna kind of push with my inside hand while supporting on my outside hand and stretching it out. So now I have a concave and a convex shape, right? And those are all gonna be things you're gonna do with your hands when you're making forms on the wheel. So I could leave this clean, right? But I wanna definitely come in and clean up the slip on the outside so that I can grab it. Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'll do that on the outside with this wooden knife. So the wooden knife is gonna come in. I like to brace myself. I hold it like a pencil, and then I just come in and hold it right against there. You can flip it around and grab that clay, flip it around again, and most of it will kind of just peel away. So that gives me like a really nice clean shape there. I could decide, ooh, I want that cleanliness on the inside, so I'm gonna clean that edge up. Make a little tiny groove for my wire tool. I've got to clean up here. And this is something, again, you've got to do every single time before you take something off the wheel, is clean up the outside edge. I'm just going to make a cut on the inside. Right, so I could use this, let's figure out what this tool does, right? So again, I'm supporting on the outside and I'm just pressing in and making some curves. you could take a needle tool or some other tool. If you slow it really slow it down, you can go back and forth, right? I mean, so I just want you to figure out, you know, have fun, make lots of different marks, make lots of different shapes. And then again, once this is turned off, I'm just gonna run through both of these with my wire tool. So often what will happen when you're working with these cones, especially for new wheel throwers, is if you come up too fast, and then you come up too fast, and then you come up too fast, and this thing has now become this weeble wobble of disaster, okay? If you start to see this, cone it back down. That's gonna be your first step, is coning it back down. This helps to get it under control and back into a stable position, that then we can start coning it back up again. And again, hands on either side, compressing in, using your thumbs, extend your thumbs as this thing gets taller, and slowly coming back up, right? And sometimes it becomes more noticeable in a certain place or in others, because like right at the top, because people think, oh, I'm done. And you come up really quickly. And sometimes you can just kind of stabilize it that way. Sometimes you can come in with a rib and come in and stabilize it this way, okay? But 9 times out of 10, the easiest thing to do is to cone this baby back down, okay, back into itself, to get it to be stable and centered. And then notice that, and we tend to have our things that we do, like, you know, letting go too soon, or finishing too quickly, releasing the clay without releasing your pressure. Okay, so I am going to bring this in as my centered piece a little bit taller than I have the other centered pieces, because I'm gonna make this tall, right? So, and I've just done that by pressing it in and then giving it a little bit of compression, but not pushing it back flat down. Okay, so now I have this piece that I'm going to start to cone up. And this is the shape that you're going to start anytime you make a cylindrical form. A cup, a teapot, a vase, right? Or anything that's tall and canister-like, okay? Because it starts giving us the height. If I ask you to make an 8-inch cylinder, this is already like 3.5, 4 inches. There's half of your height, okay? So I have this. I don't want to come up too much farther yet, because we do want to make this hollow. I don't want to make it so tall that I can't get all the way down to the floor. So I'm going to start with my thumb and just start going all the way down, and it's getting stuck. And then I'm going to switch to my fingers and my hand, because they're a little bit, you know, longer. So I've gotten down there, and that's just going to mean that this thing isn't super solid. And you can see it got a little off center there, but I'm just gonna grab this clay and kind of compress it. And now on the outside, I'm gonna compress it in. I'm just pushing on the outside, and what I'm doing is I'm watching the inside become narrower. And this is called collaring, and this is gonna be a skill that you use anytime something is too wide and you need it to come back in, or if it starts to get a little bit wobbly, you can bring it back in. And so every time you collar in, you have to kind of grab this clay and stretch it out a little bit vertically. We're just going to collar it in a little bit more, and then with the side of your finger and your hand, just kind of stretch a little bit vertically. If you collar in too much, it will start to wrinkle on the inside. Like if you were taking a piece of fabric and drawing it in with a drawstring, that's what it will look like in the inside. And so if you start to see that, it means you need to pause and kind of stretch it up a little bit, okay? So I'm collaring right down at the base there as well, and bringing this thing very, very slowly up, so that I can get a taller piece. Okay, collar in. The taller the thing gets, the more wobbly it gets, and that's the nature of working with something tall and skinny. And so it's just sort of small adjustments. But now I have a hole all the way down, which means this is not a solid piece of clay. I can take my sponge and get a rest of some of my slip off. And I can think about what I might do with this form. All right, so here I could decide, okay, I want to collar it in. I want this to be sort of 3 kind of nubs. I can change the profile by just being very specific about where I collar in terms of shape. Round that around. I can do the same thing here. I could decide to flare this out. I'm just stretching it. Still trying to keep it, when you do some stretching, of course, when you stretch, it's going to become thinner. Try and keep it to at least a 1/2 inch in thickness. I can come back and kind of compress. Maybe I just want to swoop this, and so maybe I'm thinking about like a vase form almost ultimately, who knows? I'm going to push in a little bit there at the bottom, get my knife tool, make my undercut, flip it back over, grab those little bits. I can come back in, just clean that edge up if I want to, right? So I could leave this one just like this. We made a lot of kind of sharp angles before, but you can use your other tools to make things quite soft. Maybe I just come and do a little shaping there. Your damp, dry sponge is a really good friend in kind of finishing up shapes and removing slip. So maybe that's a shape I'm gonna make, right? But I started from that vertical space. I've opened things up, and you're kind of learning how things push and pull. So even if you don't have your tools with you, that's okay. And if you don't have some of the new tools I've asked you to get, that's okay too.